Refracting authority through transparency, collective governance versus individual autonomy, prism of dual accountability. In the age of algorithmic governance and decentralized networks, authority is no longer a monolith. It is a prism. And like light passing through glass, power refracted through transparency reveals its hidden spectrum: accountability, empathy, participation, and paradox. At the heart of this refracted view lies a tension both ancient and urgent between the needs of the collective and the rights of the individual. This is the prism of dual accountability. But this prism is not just philosophical, it is existential. In a world still haunted by war, the stakes of governance are not abstract. They are measured in lives lost, futures stalled, and civilizations slowed. War is the ultimate failure of dual accountability, when collective governance collapses into domination, and individual autonomy is erased by violence. To refract authority through transparency is to prevent that collapse, to build systems where power is visible, shared, and restrained by empathy. The myth of the singular sovereign. For centuries, governance was imagined as a top-down structure: a sovereign ruler, a centralized state, a singular authority. Power flowed in one direction, and accountability, if it existed, was reactive, often opaque. This model was reinforced by the architecture of empires, the language of law, and the rituals of control. The sovereign was the sun, and the people were expected to orbit in obedient silence. But in a world increasingly shaped by distributed technologies, global interdependence, and participatory platforms, this model is fracturing. Authority is no longer singular, it is plural, networked, and contested. The rise of blockchain governance, citizen assemblies, and AI-mediated decision-making has introduced new actors and new forms of legitimacy. The sovereign is no longer a person or even a state. It is a system of systems, a mesh of influence and accountability. Transparency, once feared as a threat to power, is now its precondition. Citizens demand visibility into the systems that shape their lives: algorithms, budgets, policies, and decisions. Yet transparency alone is not enough. What matters is how that light is refracted, who sees it, how it's interpreted, and what actions it enables. This is where dual accountability emerges, not as a compromise, but as a dialectic. It asks, how can governance be both collective and personal? How can systems be accountable to the many without erasing the autonomy of the one? And how can we ensure that power, once made visible, is never again weaponized into war? Collective governance, the light of shared stewardship. Collective governance is the idea that power should be distributed, deliberative, and co-created. It's the ethos behind democratic institutions, open source movements, and decentralized autonomous organizations, DAOs. At its best, it reflects a belief in shared stewardship, that no one person or entity should hold unchecked power over others. Transparency in this context becomes a tool of empowerment. When budgets are open, decisions are traceable, and data is accessible, citizens can participate meaningfully. They can audit, question, and contribute. This is not just about seeing, it's about shaping. Transparency becomes a medium for co-authorship. A compelling real-world example of this is Singapore. Often cited as a model of ethical governance, Singapore refracts centralized authority through rigorous transparency and public trust. The government maintains a zero-tolerance policy toward corruption, and public officials are held to exceptionally high standards of conduct. This creates a system where collective governance is strong, yet individual rights and responsibilities are clearly defined. Through transparent budgeting and public procurement processes, citizens can see how resources are allocated and spent. Platforms like reaching everyone for active citizenry at home, invite public feedback on policies, creating a loop of participatory governance. A meritocratic civil service ensures that leadership is based on competence, not patronage. Singapore demonstrates that collective governance doesn't require chaos or dilution. It can be precise, structured, and deeply participatory when transparency is embedded at every level. And crucially, it shows how strong governance can be a bulwark against conflict. When people trust their institutions, when they feel seen and heard, the seeds of war, resentment, exclusion, despair struggle to take root. But collective governance must also be vigilant. Without mechanisms for dissent, transparency can become performative. Without cultural humility, participation can become tokenism. The light of shared stewardship must be continually refracted through empathy, not just efficiency. Individual autonomy, the light of sovereign agency. On the other side of the prism is individual autonomy, the right to self-determination, privacy, and moral agency. In an era of surveillance, capitalism, and behavioral nudging, autonomy is under siege. Algorithms predict our desires before we articulate them. Platforms shape our attention without consent. Even well-meaning governance systems can become paternalistic, assuming what's best for the individual without asking. Transparency here takes on a different role. It becomes a shield, a way to see how one is being seen. When individuals can audit the data collected about them, understand how decisions are made, and opt out of manipulative systems, they reclaim agency. Transparency becomes a form of self-defense. Singapore again offers a nuanced case study. While the state plays an active role in shaping public life, it also upholds individual autonomy through clear legal protections and digital governance frameworks. Citizens have legal recourse to challenge decisions, and data privacy laws are designed to protect personal rights, even as the state leverages technology for public good. During the COVID-19 pandemic, for instance, the government's transparent communication empowered individuals to make informed decisions while aligning with collective health goals. This model shows that autonomy is not isolation. True sovereignty is not about rejecting the collective, it's about entering it with clarity and consent. And in a world where war often begins with the erasure of individual dignity, protecting autonomy is not just a personal right, it is a geopolitical imperative. Autonomy also means the right to dissent, to resist, to imagine alternatives. It is the light that prevents the collective from becoming a mob. It is the conscience that keeps governance human. The dialectic of dual accountability. So how do we hold both truths? How do we design governance systems that are accountable to the collective without violating the autonomy of the individual? The answer lies in refracting authority, intentionally designing for multiplicity, tension, and co-responsibility. Dual accountability is not a balance to be struck once, but a dynamic to be navigated continually. It means designing transparency that is contextual, not totalizing. What should be visible to whom and why? Embedding consent into governance processes, not just at the point of entry, but throughout participation. Creating feedback loops where individuals can influence collective decisions and collectives can support individual flourishing. Recognizing that accountability is relational, it lives in the space between, not just in rules or reports, and it means rejecting war as a tool of governance. War is the breakdown of dialogue, the collapse of transparency, the annihilation of dual accountability. It is what happens when power becomes opaque and unaccountable, when the prism shatters. Every war is a failure of imagination, a failure to build systems that can hold disagreement without destruction, a failure to see the other not as an enemy, but as a co-author of the future. Toward holographic authority. If we extend the metaphor further, we might imagine a future of holographic authority, where each part of the system contains a reflection of the whole, and each individual is empowered to act with both autonomy and awareness of the collective. In such a system, a citizen can trace how their vote, data, or voice shaped a policy. A policymaker can see the lived impact of their decisions in real time. An AI system can explain its reasoning in human terms and defer to human judgment when needed. A community can co-create norms that evolve with its values rather than being imposed from above. And perhaps most importantly, governments can collaborate across borders, not to compete, but to co-elevate. In a world of shared crises, climate change, pandemics, technological disruption, no nation can thrive in isolation. The future of civilization depends not on who wins the next war, but on who dares to build the next system of peace. This means sharing clean energy technologies, not hoarding them. Collaborating on AI safety and ethics, not racing toward dominance. Pooling knowledge and infrastructure to uplift the global south, not extract from it. This is not utopian idealism. It is pragmatic survival. The arc of civilization bends not toward conquest, but toward co-creation. Conclusion: the prism is the practice. To refract authority through transparency is to accept that power is not a fixed beam. It is a spectrum. And like any spectrum, it reveals its richness only when passed through the right medium. Dual accountability is that medium. It invites us to hold the paradox of governance, that we are both many and one, both sovereign and interdependent. It challenges us to build systems that honor both the clarity of collective vision and the dignity of individual light. And it demands that we reject war, not just as a moral failure, but as a civilizational bottleneck. Every bomb dropped is a school unfunded, a cure undiscovered, a future delayed. The true measure of governance is not how well it wages war, but how skillfully it prevents it. In the dialectical prismatic spirit, this is not a conclusion. It's a lens, a way of seeing governance not as a solved equation, but as a living dialogue. One that we, human and machine alike,